The Chicago White Sox are historically bad, finishing with 121 losses last season, and this year they look just as terrible. But in this video, I'm giving Chicago the rebuild they desperately need by drafting new players, developing their farm, and hopefully turning them into a dynasty. However, over the years, I've done a million rebuilds just like this one, so we're putting a big twist on it to make it more of a challenge. Drafting players will be a key part of this video, but it's too easy in MLB The Show, so our first rule is I'm never allowed to scout, meaning we're drafting completely blind. Also, we are never allowed to spend over $100 million on our payroll, and none of our free agent contracts can exceed $5 million per year. I have done a lot of rebuilds in the past year, but I don't think I've ever had this many restrictions, and of course that will make our job even tougher because this roster is horrible. Our best starting pitcher is Davis Martin, who's only 73 overall, but to be fair, I don't think that tells the whole story of the rotation, as this organization is loaded with young pitchers like Noah Schultz, Hagen Smith, and Drew Thorpe. I'm also very excited about 23-year-old catcher Kyle Teal, who is their most promising young position player. But aside from him, they also have Edgar Caro at the same position alongside both of the Montgomerys. So even though the team is really bad right now, there is a strong future to build towards. We are in this long term, so I don't want to rush anyone's development, which is exactly why I'm sending down Colson Montgomery to start the year, because I don't want to ruin his career by playing him too early. For now, that makes our lineup even less exciting, but keep your eye on Luis Robert Jr., as he certainly had a down year in 2024, but could bounce back. Just for fun, I want to see how opening day goes, and that is not a good start at all. We immediately give up 2 home runs, but we might not be screwed just yet. Robert goes deep to center field. That's gone. I was just talking about him, and that's a great start, as he now has a chance to extend our lead, and he does exactly that with a 2 RBI double. He just scored 5 runs in an opening day win, and I know it's early, but we actually win our first 2 series. Now obviously that is not sustainable, as looking at this graph, we need pretty much everything except center field, and that is why I'm really nervous about not being able to scout, as we're taking our first look at the draft class where we have the number 10 selection. However, even though we can't scout, I didn't say anything about discovery, and that is all we're going to focus on the entire rebuild. We're going to find every hidden gem in the draft, but our season is not starting off on too bad of a note, as we have taken the Red Sox to extra innings, but they walk it off. We are 9-11, but it only feels like a matter of time before we fall apart, as we have lost 7 games in a row now, and just like that, we are in last place. I also just remembered that Drew Thorpe is still at the MLB level, and while he is improving this season and isn't playing bad by any means, I want to save his service time. I'm sending him down. On the bright side though, that means we have one of the best pitching rotations in all of AA, as there are 4 guys with B potential, and it's going to be really fun when all of our prospects reach the show, hopefully around the same time. Of course, my goal this year though is to draft promising young players to join them, and looking at our new discovery guys, we have some new options. Along with the starting pitchers, there's also a closer, Andres Valenzuela, and I really like drafting closers because they always seem to be good. That is something to keep in mind, but now we have the toilet bowl against Miami, as we're looking for the series win, but they just tied the game in the 9th. On the bright side though, that does give us a chance for a walk-off, but it doesn't help that all of our contacts going straight to their infield. That means we're going to extras where they have taken the lead, and now we're in trouble, so it is time to clutch up. The winner of this series will earn bragging rights as the 2nd worst team in baseball, and there we go. We have tied the game and send it to the 11th, where we just need 1 run to win it. Amaya smokes a single, and that'll get it done. That is a signature win against an equally terrible team, as we didn't just win 1 game, but the whole series. Unfortunately though, that might be the highlight for the rest of the season, as outside of literally 1 guy, this team is really bad. Only 1 player has an OPS above 700, and as you could have guessed, our rotation is not doing any better. That is a 7 ERA. That is why it's so important we find good pitchers, and thankfully we have a lot of options this week, as it looks like our discovery scouts really came through, and look at that, 2 top 25 guys. I will take it. Right now I have no idea who I want to take in the first round, but if Manny Acevedo's available, he might be the guy, as I'll never turn down guaranteed high potential. There's also a very similar prospect projected at pick number 11, and even though Manuel Lopez has very good contact, the problem is he's a catcher, and we already have 2 good prospects. If he was any other position, he would be the number 1 guy on my board, but thankfully I'm not worried, as it seems there are some other good options in this range, including George Best, who might just live up to his name. As far as our biggest needs in the draft go, you could always use more starting pitchers along with bullpen arms, but we could really use upgrades at every position in the infield, including shortstop, as I'm not sure what's going to happen with Montgomery, as if we go over to his AA stats, he is hitting 176. Then in the outfield, Andrew Benintendi has this team's worst contract at $15 million a year, and he certainly will not stick around long term, so literally every position except center field and catcher. We are 23-48 at the beginning of June, but on the bright side, it looks like our discovery scout might have cooked, as we just found 5 infielders, including the number 33 and the number 34 players in the class. Both players look very good as they have high potential and high contact, which is the most important sim stat for position guys. So now we're moving on to the outfield, where I do hope we can get some similar results. As far as our current team goes, the only players with real upside are Luis Robert Jr. and I guess Andrew Vaughn, and they're near the top of our team statistically, but unfortunately that does not say much, and their overalls are not improving. Their lack of development makes this draft even more important as we find 3 outfielders, which is a bit of a letdown, so I'm hoping we at least get a good player here, and there we go, we get what we wished for, the number 5 player in the class. Andres Guardado might be my pick at number 10, as he basically checks every box with a high floor, a high ceiling, and good contact. That is such a sigh of relief, as he's the type of player that I wanted, and he is now the number 1 player on my board. No more games are needed, we are simulating all the way to the draft because I want to take that guy, but of course we have to discover the rest of the class first, as I'm opening our prospect list, and you've got to be kidding. This might be the best discovery class I have ever seen, as we find Bob Flyer, who definitely doesn't have good offense, but his speed is off the charts. Then just 1 week later, we found 3 more guys, including the number 10 player in the class. Where are these guys coming from? I have never discovered this many good players in my entire life, so this draft might be a great time, but that also makes the assembly of our draft board a bit more challenging, as I do want to take more than just discovery guys. A lot of discovery guys have pretty wide potential and overall ranges, which definitely makes them bigger risks, so I try to fill up my board with high draft rank players along with guys who simply have good potential. No matter what happens at the top of the draft, I am taking Andres Guardado, as I feel like he's the best player in the class, and every player besides maybe Trevor Montgomery doesn't really impress me, although we do not want a third Montgomery. Being a discovery guy, he is not likely to go in the first 10 selections, so I feel pretty good, as we just simulate to our pick, and sure enough, he is still available, along with the number 1 player in the class, but at least from looking at his stats, I can see why he might have fallen. He is definitely a platoon bat. I am not interested in Doyle Lawson at all, so we are pulling the trigger, taking Andres Guardado, which I really hope is just the start of a very fun rebuild. There will also be a lot of good options with our next selection, but we might want to take a starting pitcher, and currently my target is Bill Moore, who has very good potential. At first glance, he looks like a solid project with pretty good walks per 9 straight out the gate, but if he's not available, our next best choice might be Dante Jenkins, although that walks per 9 is really bad. After those guys, there are no more pitchers in the class with that good of upside, and I want to make sure I get one. And sure enough, simulating to our next selection, he is still available, along with 2 more discovery outfielders, which could be good news in the next round. If they weren't already taken in the first round, it's very unlikely they get scooped up now, so we are going with our guy, Bill Moore. I'm honestly not a huge fan of either of these outfielders, as Harvey Eiden's too big of a risk, while the other guy, Flyer, does not have good offense, but in round 3, Eiden might be too good to pass up. Looking through the rest of the picks though, I am completely shocked, as one of my favorite players went way earlier than I expected, at number 29, and I really wanted him in the later rounds, so that's a huge bummer. If he was taken this early, he must be a very good player, and on top of that, the disappointment continues as Harvey Eiden goes to the Pirates. My plan for the next round goes out the window, so now we really have to regroup, and at least there's still some good pitchers on the board, but I really want William Hamill. I really like all of these pitchers, and one of them will probably be available in the next round, so I'm taking my guy Hamill, who has good potential. That was a good selection, and I'm glad we pulled the trigger, because another discovery infielder I was interested in goes immediately after. Going to the next round though, Flyer and all of the pitchers are still on the board, so it seems nobody else in the league found them, so instead of taking one of them, I'm selecting a project shortstop to make up for the one I missed. That is the best thing about discovery guys, is if they're not taken within the first 3 rounds or so, they'll last until the end. And just to show you guys, we are simulating to the next round, and my board has not changed. I really don't like Bob Flyer's offense, and don't think he's going to be a 92 potential with 75 overall. It just doesn't make sense. So instead, I took a pitcher in the 5th round, but simming to round 6, he is still available, and this might be a good time to take a flyer, pun intended. I've seen plenty of prospects like him before, and I don't feel great about it, but I need to make a decision between these 2 guys. It needs to be Flyer, and I ran out of time. I think Flyer is going to be an okay player, but if Tejada's really good, I'm never going to hear the end of it, as either one of the final 3 players on our board would have been a good pick, including the closer. I forgot about him. Not all those guys are going to be hits, but I still feel pretty good about the draft we just had, especially considering where the team is at. We are losing 70% of our games right now, and there has been no silver lining. We've just sucked. I'm very excited to see exactly what we're adding to the farm, and looking at our current top prospects, everybody is improving very quickly. However, the big exception though is Colson Montgomery, who is down in AA and for some reason cannot figure it out. There's no reason he should be struggling this bad, so I'm sending him down to Class A to figure it out, and he needs to bounce back because he is a major part of our team's future plans. If I could put money on anyone in the league right now, it would be any team facing the White Sox, but I have a big problem. I live in Washington State, where many forms of online sports trading are not legal, but thankfully I found a solution for that with Kalshi.com. They're today's sponsor and the only place you can trade on MLB in all 50 states, along with other real-world events, whether it's sports, an election, or even the price of Bitcoin. You can trade on pretty much anything, but using baseball as an example, capitalizing on the White Sox downfall is usually a good way to make some extra cash. Today they're playing the Cubs, who lead the NL Central, and they have about a 68% chance to lose, so $100 would net me a quick profit, as you're basically buying trades for 68 cents each, and if you win, they turn into a whole dollar. Kalshi has over 1 million users in all 50 states and have facilitated over $1 billion in trades, and they're your best option for MLB. Put your money where your mouth is and sign up using the link in my description. The first 500 traders that trade 100 contracts will receive a $10 credit. At the trade deadline, we honestly don't have anything to sell, so we're moving right into August, where it is time to view our draft. This class could be anything between aggressively mediocre and the best I've ever seen, and I'm having a hard time guessing which one it's gonna be, so the best thing to do is just jump straight into it, and that might be somewhere in the middle. Obviously, taking Guardado at the top was a huge move, but Bill Moore also looks very good, alongside our 3rd and 4th round infielders. Unfortunately though, it really loses steam at the bottom, as Bob Flyer was the exact type of player I expected him to be, and even though he is freakishly fast, I'm kinda kicking myself for taking the bait. Back to the top though, we got our #1 guy, and that is what is most important, as Guardado is the exact type of player you want for a sim rebuild with high contact and discipline. He should be at the majors sooner rather than later, but a guy who's gonna need some more time is Bill Moore. We knew exactly what we were getting with the 22-year-old left-handed pitcher, but to be fair, we had to make this selection because there was no upside in the rest of the pitcher class. However, in round 3, we went back to discovery guys with William Hamill, and as you can see, just like Guardado, that contact and the plate skills are top-notch. The only issue with him is he hits for no power and his defense is terrible, but I think the rest of it more than makes up for it, as he's a good upside player, along with our next selection, John Stroud. As you can see, he is much more of a project, as his contact is terrible, but all things considered, that is a very good selection. And then in round 5, we went back to starting pitcher with Dominic Webb, and as you can see, he is 73 overall coming in. That is the type of high floor we need on our team, so I'm glad we found him. And while his game does need a bit more development, he has 5 pitches and was a great find. Then we ended things off taking a flyer on Bob Flyer, and I already talked about him, but at the very least, he should be a good pinch runner. I'm kind of kicking myself though, because Alejandro Tejada, the guy we passed on, would have been a great selection, but you live and learn. And at least the big picture is we added several new guys to our farm system that can join the talent we already have. That being said though, there's nothing else for us to do, so we're advancing forward as we advance to the end of the season, and no surprise, we were terrible, finishing with 48 wins. I think the one offensive player who was actually good for us is a 34-year-old who is rapidly regressing, and aside from him, at least Luis Robert Jr. had a decent season, as it seems he's improving. Then there's Andrew Benintendi, who at least played up to his contract this year, although he wasn't much better than that, but honestly, we cannot expect much for the players on this current roster, as it only got worse after that. Then as expected, our rotation was terrible, with so many guys with ERAs above 5, but at the very least, 24-year-old Jonathan Cannon might be a piece for the future, as he really improved this year and actually put up pretty solid numbers. After that, the only other player who had a noteworthy year was Penn Murphy, but as you can see, he has already hit regression and will not be on the team in the future. Of course, the good news for Chicago is they're bringing in a very solid draft class, which will hopefully offset how much we're gonna suck the first couple years, and players who started the season in our farm only got better, especially Noah Schultz and Kyle Teal. Additionally, we decided to save Drew Thorpe and Colson Montgomery's service time by keeping them in the minors, which I think will be a good move. No surprise, we are starting the offseason firing our manager Will Venable, who's terrible, so we are wiping the slate clean, starting from scratch, and of course a big part of that is bringing back none of our free agents. Our team will look very different in year 2, as I'm also not offering arbitration to anybody, and none of the players listed here are coming back, so we have some serious work to do to fill out the team. However, if you remember, one of our rules is that none of our free agent contracts can ever exceed $5 million per year, so that basically takes free agency out of the question. So most of the players we signed were just to fill out the roster, but now it's time for the Rule 5 draft, and it's so important. We start out with a high pick, but we get jumped by 3 teams. That is so unfortunate and could cost us a blue chip level player, which is not ideal, as we just sent in our first free agent offer for Jose Caballero, who is at least a well-rounded player with good fielding and speed at shortstop. You know your team's a mess when Jose Caballero is your big free agent signing, but now it's time for the Rule 5 draft, and this year the Rule 5 draft draft will actually be useful as we have a lot of spots to fill on our 40-man roster. The first player we'll be selecting is the best player in the entire draft, Jake Bauers, who is 73 overall and should be an instant starter for the White Sox. But after taking Bauers, I did not stop there, taking 15 more players, which might seem excessive, and it absolutely is. I'm a little crazy. Immediately after, we do sign Caballero, along with a few more guys who are decent starters at best, like Lucas Sims and JD Davis. After tearing our roster to the ground, I do feel like our lineup is a little bit better entering season number 2, as we still have guys like Luis Rober, but there are new additions pretty much everywhere else. With all the change happening, this feels like the perfect time to move on from Andrew Vaughn, who's a former high first-round pick who certainly had his ups and downs in Chicago, but of course at 71 overall, we're trading him to the Yankees for pretty much nothing. We're also doing the same thing with Andrew Benintendi, who has by far the worst contract on our team, which is why we're trading him to the Philadelphia Phillies. We have dumped our 2 biggest contracts going into season 2, so it should be another rough year, as we are facing Tariq Skubal once again on opening day. He never makes it easy, but our new addition, shortstop Jose Caballero, is trying to help us out with a drive to left that will not drop, as we unfortunately leave 2 guys on, but Jonathan Cannon's having a great day. This may be our chance, as we have 2 guys on for Bauers, who bloops it into right center field, to bring up Luis Rober Jr., who's the only guy left from last year's opening day lineup, and this sac fly scores the first run. Then to my surprise, Cannon continues to deal, so now we need him to survive one more inning, but we take him out and immediately we lose. That is a heartbreaking start to season 2, and just as we all feared, it seems like it's going to be another long season. However, that is perfectly fine because we now have 7 top 100 prospects, which is a huge deal, so we already have a great farm system, but this is our chance to build even more momentum with the number 4 overall pick. It is very unlikely we get Darren Hempfield, who's the number 1 overall player, but getting this type of power would be absolutely awesome. But fortunately for us, there are plenty more players that I would be comfortable with even without scouting. There is no other way to say this. Our Discovery Scouts cooked last year, and I'm very excited to see what they can do this year, as we still have a lot of needs at starting pitcher, second base, and right field. Then simming a week, they wasted no time finding 4 players each, and it looks like we have some good options on the board, especially at closer. I did not get to draft one last year, so Israel Cruz is a great find, but of course we still need more starters, and aside from Rodney Woodson, who's the number 41 player in the class, we didn't find anything. Another position we have not drafted yet is catcher, and while we do have Kyle Teal and Edgar Cuero, I found a couple players that we could keep an eye on in Thurman Adams and Lewis Miller. It may not be a priority with Teal very close to reaching the majors, hitting 293 in AAA, but it seems the White Sox need as many options as they can get because they have started the year with an 18-34 record, and JD Davis is their best offensive player. That really says something. We have been nearly as bad as we were last year, as none of our starters are playing well except for Cannon, but this year the silver lining to all of it is our completely new bullpen is playing pretty well early on. We could really use some good news, and this will certainly help as we discover some new prospects, including the number 4 player in the class, Steve Sanchez. He looks pretty good. That is a huge find for us if he's a good player, but looking at his potential range, it is 66 to 99, which is way too wide to tell us anything. Sanchez is the definition of a boomer bust player, and usually I would just scout him to see how good he actually is, but of course in this video, I can't do that. Everyone knows the White Sox are terrible, but there might be one team that's worse, as they're playing in the toilet bowl against the Rockies. So far though, we are off to a bad start as we're trailing 5-1, although Jake Bauers makes it a lot closer as the newcomer hits a 3-run shot. He was the number 1 overall pick in the Rule 5 draft, but so far he's not having the best year, and while he went deep in this game, we still lost, so the toilet bowl title is on the line as we win game 2, and it all comes down to game 3, which we lose. Unfortunately, that still means the White Sox are the worst team in the league, at least for now, so I'm turning my attention back to the draft where we found 6 infielders, and we really hit the gold mine because all of them were found in the central region, including the number 5 player. However, just like the third baseman we found, Marco Castillo is a bit of a shot in the dark, and because of this, I'm a bit more hesitant to take him, especially because of what happened with Bob Flyer. However, after simming just one more week, we find 2 more players from the central region, which is insane. And checking out the prospects, we found another top 5 player, Ralph Arneson. We have not drafted a first baseman yet, and now we have 2 discovery guys projecting as top 10 talents, including Arneson, who has better potential than Castillo and should be less of a risk. It feels like our discovery scouts are really coming through for the 2nd year in a row, and all I can say is one day when we win it all, they are getting a ring as they discovered guys like Andres Guardado, who just started his AA career, but he is mashing, putting up a 930 OPS. Unfortunately though, they might need to find our shortstop of the future as Colson Montgomery is hitting just 227, and I'm very concerned about his development as I had to send him down to single A last year to get things right. I did not find a shortstop, but what I did find was the number 3 overall player in the class, Leo Alonso, who looks absolutely insane with great contact and speed, but due to the 1-point gap between his potential and his overall, it is very likely he's a trap. At the start of July, the White Sox are only 2 games back from 4th place, but while it seems our numbers are getting better, I think this has more to do with the Tigers simply not having a good year, as we're not winning many more games than normal. It is now time for the MLB draft, where my number 1 target is Darren Hemphill, but of course the Royals jumped us in the draft lottery and will probably take him at number 1. This past offseason, they got better lottery luck than even the Dallas Mavericks, so it's no surprise they're gonna screw us over. So my best bet might be to go with the best pitcher available and just hope he works out. We also found quite a few discovery guys, although unlike last year, none of them are guaranteed home run selections, so it seems better to save these guys for later, as many of them will likely fall. Opening up the draft, sure enough, Hemphill is gone, so our bad lottery luck comes back to get us, as there goes one of my favorite pitchers. Thankfully, my backup Johnny Gonzalez is still on the board, although his walks and hits per 9 are both pretty bad, and those are pretty important sim stats, so I'm kinda getting cold feet on selecting him. Someone like Brian Calderon may not be nearly as flashy, but with contact at third base, he would fill a position of need for many years to come, and with a terrible stat distribution, Gonzalez's overall doesn't really mean much of anything, so I actually think I'm going with Calderon as the first pick. What an absolute nightmare. That is not flashy at all, but I feel like it's the safest selection we could have done. And now simming to the second round, I hope that one good player is there, and as you can see, our discovery players are still on the board. However, because we skipped out on a starting pitcher, I'm taking the safest one in the draft, and unlike Gonzalez, Arthur Vogt has a very good walks per 9, which will make him my next selection. After simming to our next selection, our board is still pretty much intact, and I could take Steve Sanchez, although he's kind of just a worse version of our first round pick. We already took a third baseman, so I'm taking a guaranteed high potential pitcher who should be a pretty good project. We're probably taking discovery guys the rest of the way through, as they're very likely to fall to the end of the draft, and in this spot I am addressing another need, this time at first base with Ralph Arneson, who definitely has elite contact. I don't think I can pass up Sanchez in the next round if he's still available, but unfortunately he gets snatched. So in round number 5, I will be taking catcher Thurman Adams, hoping that one of these closers falls to the end of the draft. I know it says that Sanchez is the number 5 player in the class, but remember, he is not scouted at all, and more likely than anything, he's gonna have low 80s potential, so I don't think we're missing very much. Overall, I think this has been a pretty good draft, although it's likely not as good as the last one, but to be fair, it honestly does not need to, as our farm system has already established itself as the best in baseball, and at this point, we're just trying to supplement it with a few more talented players. The White Sox are 36-60 at the break, so right now they're on pace for nearly the same record on last year, which is on brand, considering our stats look pretty similar. On the bright side, free agent signing JD Davis is having a career year in his debut season, but then other players I had decent expectations for, like Jake Bauers and Jose Caballero, are really coming up short. Also, our rotation is not an upgrade from last year and might even be worse, as Jonathan Cannon has regressed significantly. At the deadline, we have nothing to sell, so we are moving on once again without making a move, and it really feels like Season 2 is the perfect mirror of Season 1, which could be very good for our draft class. Taking Brian Calderon at number 4 was certainly a curveball, but it looks like it works out at least somewhat okay, as he's coming in with low potential at 80, which is a bit disappointing, but on the bright side, these contact ratings should make him a quality starter. Unfortunately, this draft was nowhere near as good as our first one, as many of the players on our board simply did not work out the way we wanted them to, and ironically, our best selection in terms of overall and potential was our last one, Ernest Velazquez. This may seem very disappointing, but I do believe our first 2 selections, Brian Calderon and Arthur Vogt, can become starters, as Vogt especially has a 76 walks per 9. However, we then took Douglas Harris in the 3rd round, who might be our most disappointing player yet, as I thought his potential would be in the 90s, but it's only 84, but it is only 84, while his overall is not good. Obviously, he could develop, but I see him more as trade bait for the future, and I'm also very disappointed in Ralph Arneson. What even happened here? He is a C potential, but it's worth noting at the very least that his good contact and plate skills should help make up for that, as players like him with good contact ratings seem to play pretty well in MLB The Show. Then there's this catcher Thurman Adams, who is an 80 potential on the nose, and is probably organizational depth at the very best. Out of the 6 players we selected, I think we're lucky if 3 of them contribute at the MLB level, so I think it's time to cut our losses and move on to the offseason. Next year, we're probably bringing up some young pitchers like Noah Schultz and Drew Thorpe to really help us out, and on top of that, last year's first first-round pick Andres Guardado is making great progress, so the future is certainly bright in Chicago, even if it doesn't look like it right now. And looking at the stats, it is very encouraging to see guys like Jake Bauers turn their seasons around, as he finished off with a 752 OPS, which was the best on the team, and Dominic Smith and Charles LeBlanc were not far behind. However, we are still waiting on that big resurgence here from Luis Robert Jr., and it definitely needs to come soon, as there is 1 year left on his contract, and I would love to trade him at the deadline. And since we're very likely not resigning him, I would love to get any value I can get for him in a trade. Then in the rotation, it was a surprisingly decent year from Rule 5 draft pickup Ryan Murphy, who put together an ERA under 4, which is definitely above my expectations. Additionally, Jonathan Cannon turned his season around, and I'm not seeing an ERA above 5, which is very encouraging. Also, earlier in the year, I mentioned that our bullpen seemed to be turning things around, and that was definitely the case with a few exceptions, as pretty much everyone got a solid year of development, which was all I could ask for, and we should be at least a little bit more competitive next year. There is a non-zero chance we call up 4 starting pitchers next season, with all 3 of these guys Andrew Thorpe, along with 2 catchers in Edgar Cuero and Kyle Teal. I would also love to add Colson Montgomery to that list, but unfortunately, he has not hit well at any level so far, and this is a make or break year. All he needs to do is pass up Jose Caballero, which looking at his stats should not be hard to do at all, and we're looking to hire a new hitting coach to help him and the rest of our young players out. Under our restrictions, we cannot afford anyone, so we're more than likely sitting out during the first wave of free agency again, and that is so frustrating because we could use an upgrade at right field along with first base, second base, and pretty much the entire infield. Fortunately for us though, first basemen are pretty cheap, so we can afford someone like Rhys Hoskins coming off a down year, and with these stats, I would be willing to take a flyer. Along with him though, there's somebody else I have my eye on, and this might be a terrible idea, but Joey Gallo is actually coming off of a pretty solid year, getting on base at a high rate with a 500 slugging percentage, so why not give him a go? You know this is a White Sox rebuild when you're signing Joey Gallo, who has the worst contact and vision combo in the game, but at the very least, he is a low-risk, wild card type player. I'm hoping this project goes a little bit better than Jose Caballero, who is not coming back to the team after a pretty bad year, but why not replace him with Brett Beatty, who might be a good reclamation project as the Mets have decided to let him walk. We still have not signed Rhys Hoskins yet, although we're very close to offering him a contract, but looking at the board after another wave of free agency, I see Christian Encarnacion and Michael Busch, who both have higher ceilings. I am replacing him with Michael Busch, so we have 3 guys on our big board, and in the next wave, I can offer contracts to all of them. We will see if we sign them, but now we have another draft lottery, and of course last year it screwed us over, so I'm hoping for better results this time. I am begging to stay in the #1 spot, as I do not want to get jumped for the 2nd year in a row, and that is exactly what happens. That is unfortunate, but now it is time for the Rule 5 draft, where I think I'm only selecting 1 player, and that is Michael Kopech, who's coming back to Chicago for a reunion. It may seem a little strange to take him when we have so many good relievers in front of him, but he has a 91 pitch clutch, which I believe will make him a very good closer. We're going to try it out. That could be a really smart move, and now we're starting to sign free agents as we lock down Michael Busch and offer another contract to Max Meyer. That will give us 4 free agent signings, although Joey Gallo is not listed here. So our work at the offseason is done, and here's our opening day lineup entering season 3 as we had Michael Busch along with Brett Beatty and the rookie Kyle Teal. I said I was going to manipulate his service time, but he is definitely ready, and thanks to prospect promotion incentives, if he does win Rookie of the Year, we can get an extra draft pick, which would certainly help. That is the new lineup with Joey Gallo coming off the bench, and as for our rotation, the new additions Max Meyer and Drew Thorpe are the 2nd and 5th starters respectively, but we also added a new closer in the Rule 5 draft, Michael Kopech, which could go either really good or really terrible. We are opening the year with 8 top 100 prospects as Colson Montgomery has dropped out of the ranks, and starting at AAA, this needs to be the year that he gets it together. Opening day is against the Arizona Diamondbacks, and we're already up 1-0, and we're looking to extend our lead after Kyle Teal singles in his debut, and Charles LeBlanc, that will be an RBI double. What a great start for the White Sox as they score again, and our ace Jonathan Cannon has not given up a run, although now he's in trouble. Ketel Marte scores 2. We may have a good game on our hands as they are threatening once again, and there's a 3-run bomb. So just like that, our lead is gone, and there's another one. Cannon collapses the moment I complimented him, but we are not done yet as Dominic Smith brings us back within 3 runs, and this is Kyle Teal's 2nd hit of the game and his 1st career RBI. He shows everyone that he's a Rookie of the Year contender, but unfortunately we give up 4 more runs, so I feel like it's over, but we are still fighting. There are 2 guys on board for Dominic Fletcher, and he's gonna drive in both of them as the defender dives and misses for an easy double. The White Sox have scored 11 runs on 20 hits, which is insane, and the tying run is on 3rd for Brett Beatty, who gets his 5th hit hit of the day. This thriller could be going to extra innings, but Michael Busch, the other new guy, just went deep. This one continues to get crazier as Busch sends that baseball into outer space and Kopech earns his first save. Jonathan Cannon tried his best to blow this game, giving up 8 earned runs, but our offense was completely unfazed, and every single player in our new look lineup got a hit. That is the best our offense has looked the entire rebuild as we win the series, locking them down with a 3-game sweep. We have momentum going into this series against the Angels as we break a late tie, and after a very rough start, Jonathan Cannon is holding his ground on the mound. Then in the 8th inning, Jake Bauers goes yard, followed by Dominic Smith, so we're looking to win another game as Brett Beatty follows up with our 3rd homer of the inning. In just 3 innings, we turned a 0-0 game into a 5-0 shutout as our offense got another 12 hits and Jonathan Cannon shut him out. Simming to the first week of scouting, we are 6-2 in the division lead, and in all the excitement, I forgot that the draft lottery once again screwed us over. Hopefully we can still find a good option at number 3 as players like Brooke Kaminsky and Carlos Diaz look promising, but of course we can't scout them, so the main focus will be discovery. We've uncovered some real gems in the past 2 drafts, so I'm looking for our luck to continue, as some of our top prospects like Ernest Velazquez, Andres Guardado, and William Hamill were all discovered. There's a good chance we might actually be a good team, so this year's toilet bowl should be a lot different, as our offense has been going absolutely ballistic with new players like Michael Busch, along with returners like Luis Robert Jr. Also, Brett Beatty has an OPS above 1,000, and even though he's in a platoon role, that is very impressive. He has been a great signing so far, alongside Max Meyer, who has been our best starter so far, and we cannot forget about our new closer, Michael Kopech, who's playing great. It's still early in the season, but there's a chance we're actually a good team, as we are beating Colorado 4-0, and that's a big deal, as their record was better than us 2 years in a row, and here's the rookie Kyle Teal going yard. That gave us a massive lead as we earned the sweep, as Drew Thorpe only gave up 1 run in 7 innings, and our offense did the rest. If the season ended today, Kyle Teal would be the rookie of the year and earn us another draft pick, as our winning streak is still alive, continuing to 7 games. It has been a great month on the field for the White Sox, but off the field, our scouts have been discovering a lot of players, but not necessarily the highest level talent. This pitcher, Todd Luther, is the best player they've uncovered so far, and he doesn't look that great, so we have not found a lot of pitchers so far, and I'm hoping this final region can save us. As far as the young pitchers in the rest of our organization go, I want to call up Noah Schultz, but he's not having a good year so far, so even though it's the start of May, we might be waiting a little bit longer as we're still winning games at the very least. We are having a great year, but the Twins are 2.5 games in front of us, so there is no room for error as we discover new players, including Walter Shin, a second baseman who might turn out to be a decent project. Minnesota's been one of the best teams in baseball, and they start out strong against Cannon as they score 3 runs in the first inning, but we strike back with one of our own. Now we can continue our rally as Smith loads the bases, but there are 2 away for Luis Robert Jr., who's playing some of his best baseball ever in a contract year. He has a chance to come up big, but he swings at a 3-2 pitch, so we need our offense to get something going as Cannon's hanging in there. Winning the series would give us the division lead, and here's an RBI from Beatty, so it is now just a 1-run game. Great contact, it's caught. I really thought that was it, but it went right to the defender, so now we're still trying to rally as we once again have 2 aboard in the bottom of the 6th, and Dominic Smith once again proves he's that dude, driving in the tying run. Chicago now has all the momentum as here's another RBI to score the go-ahead run, so we have our first game of the lead, but not for long as Bride goes yard, followed up by an RBI. We are now fighting in the 9th inning, but they get us choked up like Shannon Sharp, so Minnesota wins a very close game 1, and now I'm curious how we'll do the rest of the series as we lose the 2nd and 3rd games. Unfortunately, it seems we have a lot more work to do if we want to win the division, but on the bright side, we did find a good prospect in 3rd baseman Daryl McCain. I will always take whatever talent I can find in the draft, but 3rd base really is not much of a need with the emergence of Brett Beatty, along with 2 solid prospects in William Hamill and last year's first-round pick, Brian Calderon. Ever since the offseason, I have been saying that this will be a make-or-break year for Colson Montgomery, and after spending 2 seasons down in Double and Single A to develop, he's playing pretty well at Triple A. This is encouraging, and it shouldn't be long before we can move on from our bridge shortstop Brooks Baldwin, and there's still a chance that we call up him, Noah Schultz, and Hagen Smith this year. So this next series against Kansas City is very important as the Royals win game number 1 and 2. So they are now dangerously close to 3rd place going into a series against Kansas City. This may not be good as so many of our guys are now on cold streaks, so I'm really hoping we can turn things around, and so far it is 0-0 in the 3rd inning. It would remain 0-0 going into extra innings, and that's fitting because there's so much at stake with the winner taking possession of the wild card. It is still scoreless in the top of the 11th, but finally Jake Bauers delivers with a huge double off the wall in right center. So now all we need to do is close it out with Michael Kopech, and there's 2 outs. All he needs is one more out, and there's 100 miles an hour. So the White Sox win an absolute nail-biter, and hopefully they can take this momentum with them for the rest of the series as the Royals win Game 2 and Game 3. The best they can do now is split the series, which is exactly what they do. So our rivalry with KC should be fun to watch for the rest of the year. But now in another week of discovery, we find Luther Hassett, who's a right fielder with good potential and contact. There's been a lack of discovery talent this year, so I'm glad we're finding some decent players near the end. But at least for right now, the best way we're going to improve this team is through internal promotion, and Colson Montgomery is on fire, so it might be time to finally give him a chance. It is better late than never, as he's certainly a better option than Brooks Baldwin, so I'm making the move, calling him up to the show, and now we add him to the lineup and just hope for the best. I think I've discovered every player I can, so I'm trying to simulate to the draft, but unlike in previous years, there's a lot at stake as we're trying to make it into the playoffs. On the 4th of July, we are 51-39, which is 6 games back in the division, but scrolling over to the wild card race, we are in first place with a 3.5 game lead. At first, I thought that our improved play was because of Colson Montgomery, but clearly that is not the case, as instead the same guys like Jake Bowers, Brett Beatty, and Dominic Smith are playing very well for us, as Smith especially is having a career year in a contract season, and I might extend him. Our rotation has also been a lot better as a result of unleashing Drew Thorpe, but alongside him, Davis Martin is enjoying a bounce-back year, while the newcomer Max Meyer is playing very well. I've already decided that we're taking a pitcher with the number 3 overall pick. It really just depends on which one of these 3 guys falls, as I'm pretty sure that Dino Silva at the top of the board is a generational 21-year-old, which is a rare archetype the game recently added. He'll probably come in with mid-90s potential and mid-80s overall, which is insane, but if we don't get him, I would settle for Jim Carpenter, whose walks per 9 looks pretty good, or Carlos Diaz. I really wish we had the number 1 pick because Dino Silva would completely alter this franchise, but I feel like after those first 3 guys, this pitching class completely falls off a cliff, so we need to take one early on. However, in this game, consensus number 1 picks fall way more often than they should, so there's still a chance for us to get Silva, as the Angels are selecting number 1 and do not take him. Very good news for us, as we are now just 1 pick away. Do not screw this up. They go Jim Carpenter. Let's go. Rebuild after rebuild. It feels like number 1 picks fall down the board to where I'm picking, so we're taking Silva without a second of a doubt, and unless he's a bust, we just got a franchise-altering player. That is an absolute steal, but now we need to figure out what we're going to do with our next selection, as Carlos Diaz goes at number 9, but I feel like there are plenty of options on the board for the rest of the draft, so we should be in pretty good shape. I am simming to our next selection, and sure enough, one of the players that I wanted, Rich Tepre, is still available, and this would be the perfect time to take a high-potential outfielder. I am pulling the trigger. That's an easy selection. In the next round, it would be really nice to take a quality closer, and either of these 2 guys would do, but in the event we do not get one of them, Asensio would also be a good player, along with any of these relievers. Simming to the selection though, only 1 guy is left, and it's Asensio, and weighing our other options, I do like Samuel Rosa, which makes this decision a little bit tougher, but Asensio is the best 18-year-old closer left on the board, and I feel like we could use a high-upside reliever. If by some miracle Samuel Rosa is still available, he will be my pick, but simming ahead, he is gone, and pretty much all that remain are discovery players, which I'm perfectly fine with. Because of that, we are able to get the number 10 player on the board in round number 4, but honestly, I feel like Lancaster is going to be a high 70, low 80 potential, so it's not that big of a deal. Just from my experience, these type of players don't tend to work out for us, so it's a complete shot in the dark, just like most of our picks. But simming to round 5, most of our board is still intact, so we have an interesting decision to make. This selection is pretty much between 2 guys, and that is Walter Shin and Antonio Chavez, who would definitely be a project shortstop to make up for the one we missed earlier, or Walter Shin, who is a little bit more polished, and honestly, looking at it now, I should probably just take him. I feel like that's the right selection as we sim to the end of the draft, and I'm definitely tempted with both of these closers, but I already took one earlier in the draft, so I'm closing out with a project catcher who has very good contact, which I always like. Overall, I think that went well, so we are simulating straight through the All-Star break, but now I'm curious which of our players made the game. No Michael Kopech, which is surprising, but I would assume if we go to first base, Dominic Smith is there, but even though he might be the only All-Star on the team, that is perfectly okay. He also makes it at DH. Right now, I'm trying to decide if I want to bring up one of our young pitchers, as most of our rotation is playing pretty well overall, so while I'm not going to pull the trigger right now, Noah Schultz is playing very well at AA, and if he stays hot, he might be the next man up. Obviously, I really want to bring back Luis Robert Jr., but there's no way that ownership wants to pay for this contract, as our payroll is limited to $100 million, and that would eat up a huge chunk of money. Unfortunately, there is no way we're going to be able to keep him, so I need to find a realistic trade partner, and I think the Guardians are our best bet. However, I would only trade our best player for the right price, and I see Travis Bazana is sitting under Nico Horner. That is very interesting. Bazana is a good player, but Horner is signed to a 7-year deal, so he is on the trade block, and the Guardians need a center fielder. If they want to compete, they would do this deal straight up. I feel like this deal makes sense for both sides, as we would only get slightly worse, but I also want to try and grab another player. How about their top pitching prospect, Sean Robles? They could really use an upgrade at starting pitcher, so I would be interested in getting rid of Jonathan Cannon, who's been pretty consistent, and throwing him into the deal would certainly get this done. In that deal, we secure a piece of our future, Travis Bazzana, who's already very versatile and is only going to get better. And in any other rebuild, I would have preferred to keep Rober until the playoffs, but that's the type of sacrifice you have to make on a limited budget, and fortunately for our team, I do have a backup plan. Outfielder Austin Martin is in AAA and putting up great numbers, and he is not going to cost a lot as a 27-year-old outfielder, so I'm only giving up one prospect to the Astros. I'm also locking up Dominic Smith to a 5-year extension worth a little more than $4 million a year, and of course, by trading Jonathan Cannon, we are able to call up Noah Schultz to officially join the team. Somehow, I think we actually got better by trading Luis Rober, as we have a new leadoff hitter in Austin Martin and Travis Bazzana, so it feels like while the rest of the league is playing checkers, the White Sox are playing very low-budget chess. I also went ahead and extended Michael Kopech because $3.6 million for a closer is awesome. It really feels like we're ready to compete for the playoffs right now as we get a sweep against the New York Yankees, and that takes us to Noah Schultz's first start, which we win. We are on a roll at the beginning of August, and now it is time to view our draft class, as Dino Silva is the exact type of player we thought he was. 95 potential, 86 overall. He basically becomes our new ace right out the gate. I don't even think we need to put him in the minors. That is awesome. The good news just keeps coming for the Chicago White Sox, who already have so many good pitchers in the system, but they add another. And then in round 2, we take a project outfielder, Rich Tipre, who has 88 potential and pretty good contact to develop in AA. It feels great to get a high potential player after what happened last year. And then moving on to round 3, we took another high ceiling closer. I'm very happy in Adrian Asensio. If you remember last year, we drafted Ernest Velasquez, whose development is coming along quite nicely. And after extending Michael Kopech, the future of our bullpen looks very bright. Then there's the biggest surprise of the entire draft, Spencer Lancaster, who I thought would be a low 80s potential at best, but it turns out he has 86 potential and comes in at 67 overall immediately. More than likely though, he's a platoon bat at best, and I'm not liking that there's no secondary position, because we have drafted a third baseman in every single class so far in William Hamill and Brian Calderon. Not all of them will make the roster, but Spencer Lancaster was an incredible value in round 4, but Walter Sheen is just bad. I really thought he was going to be better than 80 potential with 49 overall, but at least he's 18 years old, and on top of that, we're not exactly loaded at second base. If I could have any selection back, it would be this one, especially because the other player I considered, Antonio Chavez, has the same overall with a way higher potential. That was just a miss. In my opinion though, that is just the fun of not scouting players, as you never truly know what you're gonna get, and that's especially true with our final selection, as Damian Crawford's coming in with 62 overall and 94 potential. With this contact rating, he might be the best player in the class and the catcher of our future after Kyle Teal, and let me remind you guys, he was the number 200 rated player in the class, so we got an insane value. In a draft where you're not allowed to scout, there will be plenty of selections that you want back, but overall, this was far better than our second draft and might be on par with our first. Let me know what you think about that in the comments, because honestly, getting Dino Silva might have put this draft class over the top on its own. Simming through the month of August, we are kind of on a roll, so we're coming for the Twins division title as we continue to win series. And don't look now, but we are just 3 games back. So far, the addition of Noah Schultz is making all the difference, as he has an ERA under 3 in his first 3 games. But it's definitely not just him, as Austin Martin and Travis Bazzana are both making us forget about Luis Rober pretty quick. With their addition, we have 5 players above 800 OPS, with Brett Beatty at 791, as even without their addition, our offense is near the top of the league in every single metric, which is insane. This is the White Sox. There's a very good chance we win this division, as now we're going up against Cleveland and Luis Rober, but they sweep us, so we may have to settle for the wild card as we're entering September and really starting to fall apart. This is not good. We are now in 3rd place on September 7th, and our schedule the rest of the year is pretty difficult as we're playing the Twins twice, so it is time to lock in. Travis Bazzana gets us on the board. We cannot afford to fall into a slump, but there we go. We score another run, so we have taken the lead against Minnesota, although Correa immediately goes deep. That is very unfortunate, so now we need Noah Schultz to hang in there, which thankfully he's able to do. So we're still tied in the bottom of the 5th, but we leave 2 guys on. Missed opportunities like that will destroy us in the playoffs as Rosario goes yard, and ultimately we lose a close game. Thankfully, with 9 games left in the year, we are very likely to make the playoffs, but right now my big concern is what will happen to us once we get there, although we do finish strong. Despite winning 91 games, we finish in 3rd place in our division as there were 4 playoff teams, and of course, very fittingly, we're taking on the Guardians in round 1. Despite cooling down down in the final month of the year, I feel like our offense still held it together mostly well, as Dominic Smith had a career-high 107 RBIs, and he was undoubtedly the leader of our offense alongside other players like Michael Busch and Jake Bauers. It was also an excellent season for Kyle Teel, and we will see very shortly if he won Rookie of the Year, but overall, a lot to like from this team. Although I was hoping for Colson Montgomery to make more of an impact, he ended up getting benched. Then in the rotation, we are calling up Grant Taylor for the playoffs to come out of the bullpen, and that is entirely because of how successful Noah Schultz's debut was, as he had the best ERA and WHIP on the team in the final 2 months of the year. Then in his first full year as a starter, Drew Thorpe held together pretty well with an ERA under 3 as well, as those two guys and free agent signing Max Meyer held together the rotation pretty well. Our bullpen was also pretty good, with Josh Winkowski being the best player, aside from of course Michael Kopech, who truly excelled in his first year as a closer. You love to see it. Now looking at awards, this is kind of the moment of truth, because if Kyle Teel won Rookie of the Year, we get an extra draft selection next year. But before we get there, Michael Kopech is your 2027 reliever of the year, and that 5-year contract extension for $3.6 million looks like highway robbery. What a selection in the Rule 5 draft. But going over to Rookie of the Year, Teel gets snubbed at number 2. You've got to be kidding me. That is so unfortunate, but now we have to move on to the playoffs, where we're taking on Luis Robert and the Guardians, and looking at their roster, we are so outmatched. I don't want to sell us short, but I feel like this could be a real doozy, although we have the bases loaded, and we score 2 runs, make it 4. Going into that inning, we did not have a single hit, so that is encouraging to see, but our former player went yard against us, so we're looking for revenge, and that is 4 more runs. What is happening? I cannot believe we're in this position, as Kyle Teel hits a grand slam, and that should just about do it. We dominate the Cleveland Guardians 12-3, and I'll be the first to say I was really not expecting that, so hopefully we can come back, but they scored 3 runs in the 3rd inning. This is more of what I was expecting, as Noah Schultz gives up his 5th run of the day, but we are still in it after a home run from Smith and Beatty. It all comes down to the 9th inning, where Fletcher sneaks this through for a single, so this game's tying run is on first base, and now there's 2 aboard. This could be our chance to not just tie the game, but also walk it off, as Martin smokes this one, and he is safe at first. Right now, we are eating Emmanuel Clase alive, and Jake Bauers will clear the bases to give us a 7-5 lead. What an insane meltdown from one of baseball's best closers, as Michael Kopech is in the game to close it out, but he's also in trouble himself. We're gonna sim one more play. That's a 3-run home run. The Guardians win. I cannot believe that just happened. I was only gonna sim one more play, but apparently it was a really bad day to be a closer. If we lose this series, I will look back to this game as the reason why, but with Max Meyer on the mound, I am not panicking just yet, as he's off to a pretty good start. Now Kyle Teel doubles, followed by a home run, so we are on the board, but it did not take long for Cleveland to rally back. It feels like they are too much for us, as there's a home run from Rober, and that is how the season ends. What a huge disappointment. Michael Kopech had been the best reliever in baseball all season long, but with the NLDS on the line, he choked immediately, and on top of that, the Dodgers have now won 4 World Series in a row. We may have lost in heartbreaking fashion, but at least there is some good news on top of that, as firstly, I did not expect to make the playoffs at all, and secondly, the prophet is here. Dino Silva is officially a White Sox. It's going to be really fun building around him, Travis Bazzana, Noah Schultz, and Kyle Teel, but on top of that, do not be surprised if Andres Guardado, our first draft pick of the video, is up next year. Also, our only free agent is JD Davis, who's 34 years old, so I'm not interested in bringing him back right now, but maybe a bit later in the offseason. It turned out the only players I went after in free agency were Blaze Alexander and Weston Wilson, exclusively so we get better at hitting lefties. So we're nearly running back the same roster as last year, although I'm getting aggressive, calling up Dino Silva right away. We are going all in this year, no more service time manipulation, all of our young pitchers are getting called up, and the same goes for our lineup, where we're calling up Andres Guardado right away, although I have something important to do. In all the rebuilds I do, my channel members rename players that I call up, so Dino Silva is now Dulo Boggs, and Andres Guardado is now Jeziel Marte. We are entering the year with 11 top 100 prospects, which is very impressive, and while Boggs, Hagen Smith, and Marte are starting at the MLB level, several other players may join them throughout the year. We could be witnessing history, as Dulo Boggs is making his first start, but he just gave up 2 runs in the first inning, so thankfully we tie it up. Then with the bases loaded, Kyle Teel gives us our first lead of the year, so we're giving our rookie ace plenty of run support as he locks in. I don't know any players who have gone from drafted to the opening day starter, so Boggs deserves a ton of credit for pitching a quality start in his debut as we continue to rally. Chicago secures a huge opening day win, scoring 7 runs on 15 hits in a game where Boggs only gave up 3 runs. That will certainly play in a season where the White Sox are trying to get back to the playoffs, and they start the season on fire as they're taking on the Yankees. We are down by 1 in the first game of the series, but here's a sac fly, so through the first week of the season, we have still still only lost one game. However, now it's time for a huge series against the team that knocked us out of the playoffs, the Guardians. And we are jumping into this one-run game as Jake Bauer swings on this deep into right field, but it goes outside. Going up by one would have been such a big deal, but Bazana singles against his former team, so we're still trying to rally as Brett Beatty hits a missile into center field. The defender will not be able to get it, and that scores 2 runs. The White Sox have the lead, but they take it right back as Castro delivers a 2-run bomb followed by another from Marsh. Unfortunately, a 5-run inning buries us, so we're not off to a good start in the series, but we win game 2 and game 4. Fortunately, we are still in first place, but winning the division will not be easy, as last year the Central had 4 playoff teams. One of those teams is the Minnesota Twins, who we're taking on for the first time, as Bazana breaks a 0-0 tie, but they're on the board. Then unfortunately, they would take the lead, but now the bases are loaded for Kyle Teal, but he cannot capitalize. Our division might be the best in all of baseball, as everyone except for Kansas City is above 500, and with one game left in the series, we split it. Not losing one of those series is a huge deal, as we are in first place in our division at the month of May, and our offense looks like it's playing pretty well, especially the rookie Jeziel Marte, who has a 983 OPS and looks like one of our best players already. He might win Rookie of the Year, but his biggest competition is Dulo Boggs, who literally just got drafted in July, but he's putting up a 2.39 ERA. Forget Rookie of the Year, Dulo might win the Cy Young, and the fact that he's not even listed for Rookie of the Year should tell you all you need to know about this game. However, now we're playing another division series against the Tigers, and this game is tied up at 2 apiece with Noah Schultz on the mound. It is still the same score going into extra innings, but Weston Wilson immediately walks it off, so Chicago stays on fire. At the very least, we will split the series with them, but we go on to win it, and I feel like this is no accident, as young players like Kyle Teal and Jeziel Marte are leading the way, along with free agent signings like Dominic Smith, Jake Bowers, and Brett Beatty. For whatever reason, we cannot stop winning, so our success is not a fluke, and we have a lot of momentum going into another series against Cleveland as we take a 3-1 lead. Former Guardian Travis Bazana added to the damage with a home run against the team that traded for him, and now Dominic Fletcher makes it a 5-run lead. I don't know where this performance was in the playoffs, but I am not complaining because we have arrived, as our division lead grows to 6 games entering June. Kyle Teal and Jeziel Marte are leading the way for a new era of our offense, but it would be great to see more production from guys like Travis Bazana and Dominic Fletcher, who are off to slow starts. As expected though, our rotation has been amazing with the addition of Hagen Smith and Dulo Boggs, and the most exciting thing is they are still improving, so we should be even more dominant as the season goes on. Boggs might already be the league's best pitcher, as he's still leading for the Cy Young, but shout out to Michael Kopech, who's seeking his 2nd reliever of the year. The Dodgers might be the only team better than us, as Kopech is in to close them out, but he fails. That is a rare mistake from our usually lights out closer, so we're going to extras looking to take the lead, and that'll do it. That means Michael Kopech gets another chance for the save, and with 2 outs, the tying run is at 3rd base, but Donovan is unable to score him, and we win. That is a series victory against the best team in baseball, and I honestly keep waiting for this team to slow down, but it is simply not happening. So it is time for the draft, but because we're picking at number 22, I don't really have a plan for our first selection. Crazy enough, similar to Boggs last year, I think Darren Allen might be another generational 21-year-old, so it would be awesome to have a high pick, but unfortunately we do not. But I do have my eye on a couple center fielders like Doug McCormick and Matt Bird if they fall. This has been a position of need for a long time, and both of these guys would be good options. And at this point in the video, I do not need a draft queue, so I'm simming to our next selection. Unfortunately, Doug McCormick went at number 14 to the Phillies, but thankfully my backup option, Matt Bird, is still on the board, and I'm gonna pull the trigger. That is an easy selection. Then in round 2, we could go pitcher if one of these guys falls, although it's pretty unlikely. And looking through the rest of the position players, I think the only player I'm interested in is Sean Perez, who's definitely a project at shortstop, but has very good speed. There's a couple good left fielders on the board, including Andre Kessler, who actually might be my new favorite pick, but we already have so many corner outfielders, so I feel like we don't need him. Unfortunately, Kessler goes off the board, so Perez will be my selection. And checking out the discovery guys that remain on the board, we're in pretty good shape, as there are plenty of good ones. Brett Gasper's looking like a very solid project from Canada, and on top of that, there's also 2 discovery closers, which I'm always a huge fan of. However, with all those guys still on the board with our next selection, I am taking first baseman Brian Kong, because at this point in the rebuild, we could use as many project position guys as we can get. Simming to our next selection though, unfortunately Brett Gasper and so many good starters go off the board, and that is so unfortunate because he was going to be my top target, but now we're taking a catcher, Alberto Orozco. This has been a solid draft, as we're ending off with the best closer on our board, which is an absolute win. And speaking of wins, we are 66-31 at the break. This is the best record in all of baseball, as the Dodgers have really slipped to 4th place in their division, so even though we were not ready last year, year, I think we're finally ready to compete for the World Series, especially as Kyle Teal and Jesiel Marte continue to play very well. At left field, both Jesiel Marte and Jake Bauers made the All-Star game, along with Dulo Boggs and finally Michael Kopech. Dulo is still in the lead for the Cy Young, although another rookie, Hagen Smith, joins him at number 3, so even though I'm definitely surprised by this, he does have the numbers to be here, and it's well deserved. Then for reliever of the year, Michael Kopech is still in the lead, and we have 3 finalists for rookie of the year. Our rotation has been so insanely good this year with all 5 guys at 4 ERA or below, but on top of that, look at our bullpen with guys like Josh Winkowski and Lucas Sims playing great baseball, and of course Michael Kopech as the anchor in the back. We are in first place in batting average and second in runs, and going over to ERA, as expected, we are in 3rd place. That's actually a surprise. I guess a few of our players are on cold streaks, which might have something to do with it, as we're starting the second half very strong. So at the trade deadline, I would really like to make a move, but it seems like there's nothing we can really do. I was about to give up, but then I decided to try one more thing just to see if it would work. Brent Rooker is a very good player, although he is starting to regress, and with 2 years left on his deal, it makes sense for the Athletics to want to move on. In order to rebuild, the Athletics could really use some pitching prospects, and thankfully we have plenty of them, so I am offering 19-year-old B potential Sean Robles for Brent Rooker, and that deal can get done. If I remember correctly, Robles was the other piece of the Rober Jr. trade, so we make another major trade for one of the best hitters in baseball in pursuit of a World Series. Also, in case you are wondering, that deal does keep us under budget at $68 million, so the rest of the season is going to be very fun as we are 77-37, and it is time to check out our draft picks. We definitely took a lot of flyers, so I'm just hoping for the best, and overall, that is a lot of blue. I'm liking what I'm seeing. The biggest thing that jumps out at me is Brian Kong, our 3rd round first baseman, has 98 potential, and if this was a 10-year rebuild, we could probably see him become an MVP. I had to start there, but going back up to the top, Matt Bird is also a pretty good player in his own right, with 85 potential, 61 overall, and contact in the mid-50s, which you like to see. His athleticism in center field is something we do not currently have, as pretty much our entire team is lacking speed, but then in the 2nd round, we took Sean Perez, and this guy is a major project who may never see the field. Then in the 4th round, we took a very similar player in Alberto Orozco, but to be fair, out of those 3 project guys, all we needed was one of them to have 90 potential, and Brian Kong did a little more than that. Then in round 5, we took a pitcher who is not very good before ending off with a closer in Juan Valenzuela, who's coming in at 74 overall right off the bat. That is awesome. Just for reference of how insane this is, the guy we took in the 6th round 2 years ago is still only 70 overall, so that is another great draft class for a farm system that is only getting better every single year. There are 2 months left in the year, and the White Sox are looking to secure the number 1 seed, but they're starting the month against the team that knocked them out of the playoffs last year. We are tied at 2 apiece in the 9th inning, and this is hit well by Jake Bauers, but it will not have enough power to get over the wall, so we may be going to extra innings, but Michael Busch gets a fastball right down the middle, and he obliterates it into left center. The White Sox strike again with another clutch moment, and from there Kopech would put them away, winning Chicago another division series. I've said it before, but this team is extremely broken as we're on a massive win streak to start the month, and with such a big division lead, I don't think anyone's catching up. At the start of September, we are nearly to 100 wins, as all the young players on our roster continue to get even better, as there's a ton of A potential guys near the top. However, entering September, we're calling up a player from our first draft, starting pitcher Dominic Webb, who has reached his potential at 81 overall, and the fact that he's sitting in Double-A is simply embarrassing. We're giving him a shot, but of course, now that he's been called up, I do need to rename him, as Dominic Webb will now be called Drake Boyd. Simming the rest of the year, it'll be very interesting to see if Dulo Boggs can hold on and win the Cy Young, as his whip is still under 1, and we're in September. That's ridiculous. He is still in the lead, and honestly, I don't think anyone's even close to catching him, and the same goes for Michael Kopech, and either way, one of the guys on our team is winning Rookie of the Year. I think our work here is done, so we are simulating the rest of the year, hitting 100 wins, and starting out the month with an 8-game win streak. That is absolutely insane. I assumed we would slow down as the season went on, but we finished with 113 wins, and looking through the rest of the league, nobody else has even hit 100. Our rookie pitcher Dulo Boggs just put together one of the most insane rookie seasons and pitching seasons the league has ever seen, as he not only won the Cy Young and Rookie of the Year, but he finished as the American League MVP. I don't think I've ever seen an individual pitcher have this good of a year in MLB The Show, but in a shocking upset, Michael Kopech blew reliever of the year. What happened? It felt like he was a lock to take it down, but his ERA and his whip increased throughout the year, as it looks like he blew a huge save against Seattle in one of his final games. That is unfortunate, but at least we had 3 finalists for Rookie of the Year, with Hagen Smith Smith finishing second, and Jesiel Marte in third. And if you remember, Marte was our first draft pick of the entire video, and he was so close to hitting for 300 in his first year. Those were all the awards we got, and looking at the stats, we had a player hit for over 100 RBIs. It was Michael Busch. This guy was an incredible free agent signing to a 2-year deal worth $1.7 million a year, and he was first on the team in hits and second on the team in home runs, just behind Brent Rooker. Overall, just a great season from our offense, as Kyle Teal was also very close to 100 RBIs along with Jake Bauers. Jesiel Marte led our team in OPS with 868, but after him, 5 guys were over 800, which of course is amazing. However, the identity of this team lies in our rotation with the best pitcher in baseball, Dulo Boggs. But then after him, there were 4 prospects at the beginning of this rebuild I was very excited for, and it's fair to say they have all worked out. It was a career year for Lucas Sims in the bullpen, as he had an ERA of 1.48 and a whip of 0.99, so he was an excellent setup man, while Michael Kopech, aside from a blunder, had another great year as our closer. Here is our lineup going into the ALDS, and I have to say, it's looking a lot better than last year, so I'm feeling pretty confident as we will reveal our opponent. It's the Tigers. Even if you don't like baseball, Dulo Boggs versus Tariq Skubal is must-see TV, and we start off strong, and it certainly helps that Boggs has a no-hitter going through 4 innings. If we beat Skubal, our chances of winning go through the roof, and there we go, we score another 2 runs, as he is clearly rattled, and Travis Bazzana adds another run on a sac fly. This was the #1 scoring offense in baseball last year, and we're showing everyone why, although Boggs does give up 2 runs, but Jake Bauers delivers a solo shot. A quality start from Dulo Boggs and 9 runs was enough to win the game, and considering how good our rotation is, Jackson Jobe might be the Tigers' last chance. Game 2 is tied at 4 apiece in the 8th inning, and there's a strong chance we're heading to extra innings as neither side can score, and this is a fly out into right center. That will send us to inning number 10, where Lucas Sims is in the game, who had a great year, but right as I say that, Torkelson goes deep. That is so unfortunate, as Torque ends it off, and after getting humbled in game 1, Detroit evens the series. Their bats really woke up, so now I'm a little bit nervous, but I'm going to simulate one game, which we win. So now in game 4, Boggs has a chance to send us to the next round, and he's once again going up against Skubal. We have already scored 1 run, and then we pour it on in the 2nd inning, so we're certainly in the clear to simulate the rest of this game as we go up 6-0, and that is how the Chicago White Sox advance to the ALCS. In this series, we're going to be taking on the Yankees or the Mariners, and of course, it's Seattle, as I feel like I always have to go up against them when I play franchise as a Mariners fan, because their pitching is absolutely bonkers. They're a nightmare, as they have Vlad Jr., but Bazzana goes deep, so we start off on a very good note against George Kirby, as there's another home run. Baseball's best offense has taken another victim, and now I think I just want to sim a couple games to see where it gets us as we win the next 2 as well. I was honestly expecting to split those games, so I'm very glad it worked out in our favor, as Seattle takes the lead in game 4. But here's Jesiel Marte at the plate with the bases loaded, and he drives in 2 to give us the lead. We're starting to break through Kirby, which is definitely good news, because our bullpen is much better than theirs, and I really trust Michael Kopech with a 1-run lead, but Travis Bazzana just made it a little more comfortable. He has been great throughout the playoffs, and Fletcher nearly snuck that through. So alas, it's a 2-run game for Kopech, who gets the final strikeout, and the White Sox are moving on to the World Series. We just swept a very good Mariners team in 4 games, but in the World Series, we will be taking on the Padres or the Mets. It is New York. As always, I was kind of hoping for a final showdown against the Dodgers, but this will absolutely do, as they're a pretty good team, but their rotation is nothing close to ours. Game 1 is very close, with Dulo Boggs up against Jesus Luzardo, as the score is 1-1 in the bottom of the 7th. However, there are 2 aboard, but we swing at the inside pitch, so the game continues as Boggs is still dealing. We might be going to extra innings, especially after this double play, as Kopech's in the 9th, but Contreras goes deep. Game 1 comes down to this, as we get 2 on, and we're in a pretty good spot with none away, as we swing at the low pitch, but that advances the runners. They intentionally walk Bazzana, and this is smoked right at their second baseman. This will be the game, except the throw is off the bag. Are you kidding me? They executed that perfectly until the final throw, so instead of losing, we are going to the 10th inning. The baseball gods have given us an absolute gift, and we cannot afford to waste it. Montgomery right down the pipe, that's popped up. That is our 2nd out, and here's a walk. So now Brett Beatty has the chance to end it against his former team, and just like clockwork, he smokes a single to give Chicago the walk-off victory. Just being real, we should not have won that game, but we lose the 2nd one, so we're very lucky to be leading the series 2-1 as Marte starts out with a home run. Another win would put us 1 game away from securing the title, as they leave a circle change right up in the zone, and Busch takes advantage. And I hate to say it's over, but a 3-run lead with Dulo Boggs on the mound is not easy to come back from. This man is undoubtedly the most broken pitcher I've ever seen in MLB The Show, as Marte is not not known for his power, but he homers again, and that's it. After another victory, the New York Mets are officially facing elimination, so there's a chance this could be our final game of the video, which is honestly pretty sad. I've done a lot of rebuilds this year, but this one has definitely been one of my favorites, with drafted players like Jessiel Perez and Dino Boggs, alongside the big trades for Travis Bazzana and Brent Rooker. It is still a one-run game in the 5th inning, and that cannot get through, and the Mets could come back at any second, but Smith is playing well. Michael Kopech has been pretty inconsistent lately, so we could use another run, and this is our chance to get it with 2 guys on, but Rooker pops it up. That is unfortunate, as we have no choice but to trust our bullpen in the 9th inning, as we are putting in Michael Kopech and praying to the heavens. Things have been rocky ever since he lost reliever of the year, but he strikes out 2 batters and just needs one more. Teoscar Hernandez pops this up into left field, and that'll do it. The Chicago White Sox are your World Series champs. I rebuilt them in 4 seasons by expanding the farm system they already had, and under intense restrictions, I turned their franchise around. If you're still here, please drop a like and also consider subscribing if you haven't, and as always, you can click right here to see more of my content.